Hello to my fifth graders, soon to be sixth graders. You are halfway through our distance learning. In 3 short weeks, you will be done with fifth grade, which is super duper exciting. Give yourselves a big pat on the back for the hard work that you have done and all the effort that you've put in. We've heard back from a lot of your parents about how well you are adjusting to a new routine, a new schedule, and all the effort that you're putting in. And we are really proud of you for all of that. So, keep going, hold on, because you are almost there. With all of that being said, I want to give you a quick little talk through of what to expect for this week. You will notice that you don't have any assigned pages in the Wonders workbook. That is because for this week, I would like for you to focus more on nonfiction text structures and figurative language. These are two very big fifth grade skills, which you guys already know because I've talked about how important they are all year. So I would like for you to focus on those this week. Remember that Education Galaxy is a great tool. If you have not been using that, you definitely should be if you can. It's a great tool for this week and any other week. Remember that you should also continue to be reading for fun. The work we've assigned is really important, but reading for fun, nothing replaces it. It'll make you a better reader. It'll also give you a chance to kind of escape everything and relax and de-stress. So remember to be doing that. In this video, I'm going to give a walkthrough review of our skills for the week. I'm also going to do a walkthrough for the directions for this week's assignment that's in your packet. So stay tuned for that. Remember that you have timestamps under the title of this video that will help you get to certain parts of the video if you need to refer back to it. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and go to the first part of our review. We started talking about figurative language at the end of our poetry unit right before winter break. So if you take your mind back in time a little bit, when we made our snow globes, we really started digging into figurative language and talking about what it was, and we looked for examples of it in our holiday music, and we had a lot of fun with that activity. So did we stop talking about figurative language at that point? No, we did not. And that's because it is a very important skill for you to understand in fifth grade and for you to be able to carry with you through the rest of school and through the rest of life. Why? Because figurative language is something that we use all the time and we don't even realize it. Songwriters use it, authors use it to make what they are writing a lot more interesting and entertaining, but we also use it as well. And we don't always think about the fact that we're using figures of speech in our everyday language or that we're hearing it around us, but we are. So in order to understand figurative language, we first need to understand what it means to be figurative. We have what's called figurative language, but we also have what's called literal language. What's the difference? If I am being literal, then I mean what I'm saying 100%. If I'm being figurative, then I'm saying one thing, but I'm really meaning something different. When you were a little kid, there's a good chance that you heard things around you that adults said that you didn't quite understand what it meant. For example, it might have been raining outside, and you might have heard an adult or somebody say, "It's raining cats and dogs out there." And when you were a little kid, you probably thought, "Oh my goodness, there's cats and dogs falling from the sky." That's not really what they meant. They just meant that it was raining really hard. The older that you get, you start to realize that what somebody is saying and what they actually mean are not always the same thing. So now if you hear somebody say it's raining cats and dogs out there, you know that they don't really mean that it's raining cats and dogs. That is the difference between being literal and being figurative. This is a skill that you need to know because, like I said, we use it all the time. Especially here in the South, we have lots of idioms, common sayings like "hold your horses," "it's raining cats and dogs," "you're up the creek without a paddle." We have all kinds of things that we say that mean something totally different from what we're actually saying. And it's helpful for you to be able to understand those. Also, some of you might have a future career in writing, whether it be songwriting or writing books or whatever it might be. And being able to understand and use figurative language correctly is a super valuable skill. So let's start digging into the different types that we have reviewed. First, we have similes and metaphors.
Similes and metaphors are very, very, very similar, but they are not exactly the same thing. A simile uses the words like or as, whereas a metaphor does not. So similes and metaphors both compare two unlike things. One uses like or as, so a simile uses like or as. A metaphor makes the comparison by saying that something is something else. So let's look at our examples over here. For simile, we have he was as angry as a hornet defending its hive. So we are comparing he, whoever he is, to a hornet. And we're using the word as angry as a hornet. Metaphor, we have she is a bear when she wakes up in the morning. So we're comparing she, whoever she is, to a bear. She is a bear. No like, no as. She is a bear when she wakes up in the morning. So these are very similar, but you have to remember that even though they both compare two unlike things, similes use the word like or as. Metaphors make a direct comparison that saying that something is something else. So that's the main thing that you have to remember to be able to tell the difference between the two. Let's move on to alliteration. Words that start with the same sound are used close together in a phrase or sentence. So we've always used the example, Sally sold seashells down by the seashore. They have the example over here, please plan to be present at Paul's pirate party. Both of those examples are pretty obvious because they're using the same beginning sound several times in the same sentence. Those are easy examples of alliteration to identify. You also need to be able to identify examples that don't stand out quite as much. So for example, if you hear somebody say it's Taco Tuesday, that's technically an example of alliteration, but it's a much smaller example. Onomatopoeia, this is one of our favorite words to say as a class. This is when a word sounds like the sound that it's making. So in this example, we have the kettle began to screech when the water started to boil. Another example, if you're describing a firework exploding, you might say boom. Or if you're describing a bee flying by your ear, you might say bzzz. It makes the sound that it is describing. So onomatopoeia. Lots of examples of this in children's books, like picture books. Personification. When human qualities are given to animals, objects, or ideas. Keyword here, person. Our example, the kite danced happily across the sky. Kites cannot dance. Personification is when we use an adjective or some type of description that would typically only be described or that would only be used to describe a human to describe something that's non-human. So lots of examples of this in writing and in music and really in everything. Hyperbole or hyperbole, as many of you like to call it, whichever works, but it is hyperbole. This is an extreme obvious exaggeration that's used to make some type of point. A lot of times we use hyperboles when we're being sarcastic. Our example, I've told you 1,000,000 times, don't wait until the last minute to study for the test. So a lot of times we might hear our parents use hyperboles when they're getting frustrated with us. If they've told us to do the same thing over and over again, they might use a hyperbole and say they've told you 1,000,000 times or 1,000 times, when really they may have only told you like 15 times or 10 times. Hyperbole, it's just a big exaggeration that's used to make some type of point. And you should be able to tell that the person is definitely exaggerating. That word million is used a lot in hyperboles. Or somebody might say, it took you forever to get here. That's a hyperbole. It didn't really take you forever. Idioms. We talked about idioms last week. A common saying with a meaning different than the words that make it up. So, it's raining cats and dogs out there. Hold your horses. All kinds of different examples. I'm going to try to catch some Z's. What does catch some Z's mean? It means to sleep. Who came up with that? I have no idea. But we all just somehow kind of know that catching Z's means going to sleep. That's the fun thing about common sayings, is trying to kind of figure out where they came from and how we all accepted that it means something totally different. We use a lot of idioms. A good challenge would be to pay attention for about a week, I would say spend a whole week trying to pay attention to how many idioms that you hear, how many common sayings. I guarantee you it will be a lot more than you think. We loved to use our idioms and our common sayings when we're talking to each other. With that being said, every week for probably about a month or two before we got out of school, we spent every Friday reviewing figurative language. We called it Figurative Friday. And we looked at different videos with examples from music and TV shows and movies. And I personally think we had a lot of fun with that. So my challenge for you would be to continue trying to do that. Try to look through, or to really look at the songs you're listening to. Really listen to them, the movies you're watching, commercials, TV shows. See what you can find. Also pay attention in the things that you're reading. It's all around you. Figurative language can be tricky, but it can also be a lot of fun. We've talked about this year that when it comes to nonfiction or informational text, that text structure is a huge skill. This is something that on SOLs they love to ask about. On any kind of test, really, they love to see if you can figure out how the author organized the text or organized the passage. So we talked about that it can be called different things. Typically, it's going to be text structure or organizational patterns. You have several pages in your notebook on text structure. We spent the whole month of November talking about the 5 different types, and we even spent some time with chronological order, making pumpkin pie in a bag, which several of you enjoyed, and several of you figured out that you can't stand pumpkin pie. So that was a fun experience for everybody, I think, a fun learning experience. But text structure, a lot of you do really well when we're talking about the individual types, but sometimes you get a little bit confused when you are given a passage and you are asked to figure out which is which. So we're going to do a quick little review and talk through the different kinds and what clues you should be looking for. So what is text structure? It's how the information in a text is organized for the reader. 5 different kinds. We have descriptive, we have chronological order or sequence, we have compare and contrast, we have cause and effect, and we have problem and solution. I'm going to go a little bit out of order because we talked about that descriptive needs to be the last one that you check for. So if you're reading a passage and it asks you, what is the text structure? Descriptive should not be the first one that you check for. Why? Because it's too broad. It's not very specific, so you might confuse yourself if you try to start here. You're going to start with these 4, and you're going to do kind of like a checkoff. So chronological order. This text describes a sequence of events or a list of steps. Examples of this: a recipe, a timeline in history, any kind of historical account where they're talking about dates and how things happened and what order they happened in. Instructions on how to do something, on how to build something. Those are all probably going to be examples of chronological order. So clue words that you would look for. If you're reading a passage and it wants to know what is the text structure, if it's going to be chronological order, if you're checking for that, you're going to look for things like first, next, last, transition words, before, after, dates, years. Any of that is going to be a clue that the passage or the text has been written in a chronological or sequential order. Here's a visual that helps you with that as well. The next one that you might want to check for, compare and contrast. This text discusses similarities and differences between 2 or more things. So if you're reading a passage or a text and you look through it and you realize that they're kind of focusing on 2 or 3 different things and they're telling you how they're the same and how they're different, it's probably going to be compare and contrast. So like or unlike. Similarly, on the other hand, those are just a few examples of clue words that would signal compare and contrast. You guys are pretty good with compare and contrast. You have your Venn diagram over here. We've talked about how there can also be a 3-circle Venn diagram. Could be 3 different things being compared, but this is something, a skill that you guys are pretty good at identifying, or a text structure that you're pretty good at identifying. So you would check for that. Then you would also check for cause and effect. This text explains events and the results of these events, so causes and effects. This is something that you would commonly see if they, in historical accounts or in science textbooks, this causes this to happen. We've talked about cause and effect is very, very real life. If you watch the news, which you probably don't watch a lot of the news since you are a kid and the news isn't something that kids often watch, but everything has a cause, okay? If something has happened, what you're going to be hearing in news reports is this is what caused it, or they might be asking what caused this to happen. Cause and effect, those connections. So some clue words: because, consequently, this is why, so, as a result would be a good one. Therefore, anything like that. So we have a nice little visual over here. Then we have problem and solution. The text describes a problem and how it was solved. So clue words for this: because, since, this led to. The word solution, it could be something about a correction. We have a visual here. What I would say is that cause and effect and problem solution can be tricky to see the difference between, because oftentimes problems and solutions might seem like cause and effect. Why? Or cause and effect might seem like problem and solution. Why? Because oftentimes a cause and effect situation might involve some type of problem. When it's saying that this resulted from this, it could be a problem that caused it. So if you're reading in the news about a fire, it's probably going to talk about that this caused the fire to start, and that's going to sound like a problem, okay? Because fires are usually not a good thing. That's often going to cause some kind of problem for someone. So how do you tell the difference? Cause and effect might sound like problem solution because it involves what we might consider a problem, but in order for it to be problem and solution, it has to have the part where it's solved. It has to have an obvious solution. And a lot of times cause and effect is not going to have that, okay? So cause and effect, problem and solution, these can be tricky to tell the difference between, but problem and solution, you're making sure that it is offering some type of solution. So then we're going to come back to description. If you have gone down your checklist and you've checked for all of these and it's just not adding up, it doesn't seem like any of these fit, then you're going to come back to descriptive. This text describes characteristics of something. So for example, it's going to have adjectives probably. This is just going to be a very general description of something. It could be that somebody has written about their favorite animal, and so they're describing that favorite animal to you, or their favorite place. Description, if you've checked everything else off and none of these 4 text structures seem to fit, and you come to description and it seems like that something is being described to you, not in a certain order, not comparing and contrasting with something else, not as part of a cause and effect situation, and not as part of a problem and solution, then you can safely say it is a descriptive text structure. You need to be able to do this. As you get older and you are exposed to more informational text, more nonfiction, as you start doing research projects and papers and all types of things, being able to recognize how the author is organizing what you are reading is really important. It's important for comprehending what you're reading. It's important for finding specific types of information. And of course, it's important for being able to ace those tests and be able to get those questions right on an SOL or whatever kind of test that you're taking. So make sure that you understand how to use clue words to be able to identify the different types of text structure. Let's take a quick look at your assignments for this week. So you notice that you did not have any workbook pages in the Wonders workbook. There is a reason for that. I wanted you to focus solely on figurative language and text structure this week. That does not mean that you can't do Education Galaxy, because you should. You should practice these skills on Education Galaxy. And you should also just be reading things that you enjoy. But I wanted to focus primarily on these skills because these are really important. So let's take a quick look through your assignments. You have the first couple of pages is titled Party in Room 302. There's a task A and a task B. So task A, you are supposed to read it. So read this whole paragraph and you find, underline, and label each instance of figurative language in the paragraph. Check it on the list as you go. So you should find 2 similes in here that you're going to underline and label and then check off. 1 metaphor, 2 hyperboles, 2 examples of personification, 2 examples of alliteration, 2 of onomatopoeia, 2 idioms, and then there is an example of allusion, but that's not a 5th grade figure of speech in Virginia that you have to know, so just ignore that one. If you would like to challenge yourself and look it up and try to find it, that's fine, but not required. So this is crossed off on your sheet. So it is in there, but you do not have to find it. Task B. You're going to read the story again and then answer the questions. Which instance of figurative language indicates that the classroom is loud? So which one of these is going to show you? You have to find it in the lines. So the lines are numbered for you. And you have to figure out which one shows that the classroom was loud. Read the idiom in line 6. The substitute teacher was worried that the principal might blank. Read the simile in lines 8 through 9. How did the students feel when the teacher returned? Read the metaphor in line 4. Which of the following words could be substituted for the word circus while keeping the original meaning of the metaphor? So you get to kind of change it up a little bit. 5, you're going to write the idiom from line 5. And then you're going to tell what you think it means. And then you will write an original sentence that contains this idiom and implies the same meaning. So you'll use what it means with the same idiom and make your own sentence. So you use the idiom in line 5 to create your own sentence that has the same meaning. This is a great way for you to take everything you know about all the different types of figurative language and put them together in one assignment. Is it tricky? Yes. Is it something that you need to be able to do? Yes. Your brain needs to be able to think about all 7 different types at the same time. So it might be tricky, but I promise you, you can do it. Okay, next we have color by text structure. So you have 6 different small little paragraphs, and they want you to color each one, so shade it in based on the text structure. So red is going to be problem and solution, orange is description, yellow is cause and effect, green is compare and contrast, blue is sequence or chronological order. So you will shade in each one the correct color based on which text structure it has. I would suggest that you do description last, so look for that one last. Start with the one that you find the easiest and then move your way all the way to description. Okay, then we have another assignment for informational text structures. After reading each of the paragraphs, determine the text structure in which it is written and follow the individual directions. So building a campfire. You are going, for this assignment, it is going to be really important that you look for those clue words, those signal words. Use the pages in your notebook about text structure. Use the part in the video where I talk about some of the different signal words. Use that to help you figure this out. So here, you have to identify the text structure being used, circle 3 clue words that helped you figure that out, use context clues to write a definition for the word tender, underline the sentence that tells you what to do as soon as your fire is lit. So these 2 questions are more so kind of testing your comprehension. These 2 are based on the actual text structure. Same thing here. Identify the text structure used, circle 3 phrases that give you a clue about the type of text structure used. You have 2 more that are comprehension based. Same thing here. Same thing here. And same thing here. So you notice you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 paragraphs. You have 5 text structures. So you'll use each one time. So if you find yourself finding 2 cause and effects or 2 problem and solutions, you have made a mistake somewhere. You should use each one time. Do you have to go in order? No. You can start with the paragraph that you can figure out the easiest and use process of elimination if that helps you. If you have any more questions about this assignment, have your parents email me. I have emailed them a helpful little tool that they can use to help you. But if you have additional questions, let me know.
All right, y'all, that's a wrap on week 4. If you have questions, concerns, comments, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section or have your parents email me, whichever is easier for you. I want to extend a challenge for this week. See how many examples of figurative language that you can correctly identify from things that you're reading, music that you're listening to, TV shows, movies, conversations that are happening around you, any and all of the above. We'll see who can identify the most. So before we got out of school, several kids had actually already started finding lots of examples and sharing them with me. Michaela found a ton. Sarah found a ton. Jacob, Catherine, Austin, Cadence, Haley, Bryson, Ethan, just to name a few. So try your hand at it, see how many you can find, and maybe you will find the most. Also, if you would like to do another figurative language challenge, I have provided a link to a YouTube video that is a figurative language song quiz. So the link should be right here where you can click it. I will tell you that the answers are at the end, so don't skip to the end if you would like to truly be challenged by it. If you do it, let me know how it goes. So that's it for this week, and I will see y'all next week. Have a great week. Stay happy, stay healthy, and I miss you all.